Did the internet free humanity? Welcome to Philosopher's Corner. I'm John. Did the internet free humanity? The internet was created in 1969 by Surf and Khan, or Kerf and Khan, I forget how to say his name. Two computer scientists, one at Stanford, one at UCLA. And they initially set it up just to have two computers send information between each other. The first message that was transmitted through their internet was LO, L-O, because one of the scientists from UCLA was trying to write login, and it cut off at LO, L-O, and then sent the message. They further worked on the internet, and around 1980, they created a system of protocols and information transfers called data switches, and which consisted of sending information in parsed out packets to be reassembled on the other end, and thus created a network of networks so that computers could start talking to each other, essentially transferring information, and gave birth to what we know as the internet. Now, around that time, other deep thinkers, strategizers, theoretical thinkers came into the fold, and their analysis of the situation in regards to human consciousness at the time was that they were creating space, a frontier, an information frontier, that could potentially free and liberate humanity by giving humanity access to democratized information, really for the first time in human history. Their analysis up to that point of some of the more radical thinkers for human liberation was that during the course of human history, the reason that the ruling classes throughout every country, throughout every era of human history, had maintained control over the lower classes, which was everyone, and had kept the global population oppressed for all of human history, was the fact that the ruling classes controlled information. They controlled the nature of information, they controlled the distribution of information, they controlled the context in which information was viewed. They were creating a global forced perspective on reality. And in that way, they determined that the ruling classes, in fact, had created a de facto fascism of perspective. That they were making the entire world live in one dimension, an artificially created dimension, that was created by the ruling classes to force everybody to live in that one dimension that they controlled, essentially outlawing and censoring all other dimensions that could possibly exist. And this control was achieved by total control of information systems. So the thinkers that got involved with the internet in the early 80s, their theory was that the way the internet was constructed was going to allow for the propagation of free information to the general public at a rate which was theoretically going to exceed the rate at which the establishment could control any information. And that any attempts by censoring sources of governments to attempt to stop the propagation of unfiltered information, democratized information, could never keep up with the expanding frontier of the internet. That there would always be a margin of pure freedom on the internet of information that could not be censored. That it would be theoretically impossible to control the flow of information going out to the public, as contrasted by the previous millennia worth of information control, which had been nearly total. And in that margin, where control could not keep up with freedom of information in this area, this area of information would propagate throughout the human consciousness to a point where the human consciousness would reach a tipping point and would become self-aware. And in the becoming of self-aware, would have gained information and truth regarding the previous history, the true history, which would give us the true context to become self-aware in the moment. And then at that moment of self-awareness, through the democratization of information through the internet, that the human consciousness on a planetary level would become liberated. And once liberated, all attempts to put it back into a previous state of oppression would fail, because the newly liberated planetary consciousness would recognize what those attempts were, having been informed of what the previous playbooks were, what the previous operations to oppress them were. So in the process of becoming self-aware, it included becoming aware of the previous systems of oppression. And then in the moment of liberation, when those old systems or even new systems of oppression were tried to be brought in, it would actually only further increase the liberation, because the human consciousness would be repelled by oppression. Even if it didn't recognize it at first, it would know what the vibration of it was. It would know what the core aim of the new system of the oppression was and is. And so at that point, there would be a sort of absolute freedom occurring. The internet would serve to be the liberation engine and freedom algorithm on the macro level for planet Earth and for Homo sapiens, which of course extends into all the other sentient beings on the planet. Because in their theory of things, the oppressive classes throughout history were not only controlling the humans, but they were attempting to control everything, control Earth and all of its resources and all of its sentient beings. So in the early aims of the internet to propagate free information at a pace that, at a rate that outpaced the rate of control, to create that freedom area, it was with total planetary liberation and harmony with source in mind. And they did all the calculations. You know, they had the Moore's law in terms of the propagation of technology, the advancement of technology, traditional advancements of human minds. They took into account the different levels of oppression in the different political systems in the different nation states on the planet. It was a very wide-ranging calculus that they did. So today, the question is, did they achieve it? Because that was the idea some, 40 plus years ago, when it really got going, when the internet really got going. And today, I would say yes. I would say that the human consciousness has been liberated. It has been freed. It has become self-aware. Is it total? No. Have we gone over the tipping point where now the planetary consciousness, as embodied by us as human beings, has it reached the tipping point where it's become self-aware of its history, of the history of the ruling classes and the means of control, and mainly who the different players are across time and space and across all the different types of countries and all the different typs of systems that are used and all the different ways and manners in which history has played out, and given us context as to where we're all at in this moment in a much truer way, in a way that's never been achieved before in human history? Yes. In a way that even if they turned off the internet today and we just had to move forward now with all the information and all the perspectives that we've gained from the internet and the propagation of freedom on it, would we be properly informed to move forward into a future that does not look like the past? Are we now capable and informed and enlightened enough to break the past historical cycles on the macro level, which was the chief aim of the internet, once they figured out what it was? I say yes. All the metrics I've seen, all of the behaviors I've seen, all of the big data trends I've seen point to yes. That now, if you just look at the mean, if you look at the median, if you look at the 50 percentile person from each country now in 2024, and you look at where approximately their baseline consciousness is, and you compare that person from 2024 and you compare that to a person in 1750, and you compare where their baseline consciousness is, their self-awareness, their awareness of their place in the timeline of history, their awareness of where they are on the planet, their awareness of other people on the planet, awareness of the other perspectives, awareness of the idea that there's oppression and liberation and all these different things, and you compare it to the median person from 1750, I think it's very clear that the individual in 2024 has greatly benefited from the internet, and the chief aim of the internet being a general enlightenment, a general awakening, information deluge that can result in the activation, illumination, and enlightenment of the individual across the planet, regardless of socioeconomic level, regardless of the political system they're in. I think the clear answer is yes. Now, we've recently reached that tipping point, and it can only grow from here. It freed enough people, it liberated enough consciousness that it can't be undone. And how Moore's law has a law of doubling the rate of technology, I think they said every 18 months. I think in some cases it goes even faster, but that's a general rule of thumb. Well, that's the external version, right, of tech. That's external tech. Well, what's the law of consciousness expansion? I haven't seen any real studies on the law of consciousness expansion, so this is theoretical, but from what I've seen, it's much more asymptotic, where the hard part is getting the consciousness off the ground. But once you get the consciousness, especially group consciousness, macro, once the group becomes self-aware and they get confidence and then they realize that they're working with the truth, then it just goes straight up. And that's where the really good stuff happens. That's why unity is so powerful, like organic unity. When people independently assess things for themselves and come to similar, if not the same, conclusions, and then meet other people who have also independently done the analysis and absorbed the information and come to similar, if not the same, conclusions. And then it turns out that they're correct. And when that happens in mass, when people begin to cluster together, having independently done these analyses, when they come together, the synergy that occurs is unbounded. And from that perspective, that's, to me, what the internet was the tool for. The internet was the tool for information distribution on a planetary basis to liberate the human consciousness. And that is also a view shared by many of the initial thinkers who were putting intention into the propagation of the internet in the early days. And that freedom frontier of the internet still exists today. And the information that's going out still has this effect. And enough people have been liberated and informed and enlightened that it did work. So thanks, internet. So yeah, did the internet free humanity? Did it liberate the consciousness? Yes. Well, thanks for spending some time here at Philosopher's Corner. I hope you found this helpful. And as always, have fun.